Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order if we could. Welcome to Monday, November the 3rd, meeting of St. John Common Council, open session. We start off with a land acknowledgement. I'd ask Councillor Harris to do that for us.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The land on which the city of St. John or Mennequist is situated is the traditional territory of the Wolastoqiyik. The Wolastoqiyik, along with their indigenous neighbors, the Mi'kmaq and Passamaquoddy, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s that protected their rights to lands and resources. Let us reflect.
Thank you. Next item, Common Clerk.
Thank you. Next, we have the national anthem.
Please stand. Thank you. Next item, Common Clerk.
Next is item 2.1, approval of October 20th minutes.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve the minutes, please? Councillor Darling, seconded by Councillor Ogden. On the question, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Next item.
Next is the approval of the agenda, and we do have two additions from Committee of the Whole. The first would be 17.1, Microsoft agreement, and 17.2, acquisition of easement.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve the agenda with the amendments, please? Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Harris on the question, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Next item.
Next is disclosures of conflict of interest, if we have any.
Not seeing any? Oh, sorry. Councillor?
Thank you, Deputy. Yes, I have a conflict of interest on 5.1, and I guess I'm declaring a conflict of belief on 9.1 because I don't believe in cremation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Sullivan?
5-1 for me.
5-1. Councillor Stewart? Okay. Okay, on the question, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carried. Consent agenda, I'm sorry. Over to you, Councillor Sullivan.
Thanks, Deputy. Did we want to pull 5.1 so that, okay, so I'll move 5.2 through 5.5 inclusive.
Okay, get a seconder.
Second.
Seconder, Councillor Stewart, on the question? Okay, Councillor Radwan.
Thank you, Deputy. I have a question on 5.3, the Housing for All strategy. I'm just wondering in regards to the red zone. So I see that there's 10 encampment cleanups that have taken place, and it is my understanding that there was over 60 in total. So it just concerns me because I think they're all supposed to be pretty much moved into the yellow zones by mid-November. So it has the timeline changed. I'm just wondering if they're going to be able to, if our service provider is going to be able to complete things on time.
Okay. Oh, yeah, okay.
Through the deputy to the counselor. We are working through the process for relocation. There are some case-by cases that we're working through as well for that piece. So with each individual that's looking for being relocated, we're working with them to find out what space will work best for them. The timeline or the target date is November the 17th, and we will have an update on the 17th as to where that stands in regards to if there's any delays. In this phased approach, we did note that there may be some delays based on finding appropriate locations for some of the individuals. So we are still on track to do that relocation and hope that everybody will be done by
Okay.
that time.
Thank you. Thanks,
Okay.
Kara.
Thank you, Counselor. I just want to say, you know, I think that we are off to a good start. We're not, you know, doing it perfectly, but, you know, you get 7 encampments that have been vacated, 11 that have relocated. There's been 117 outreach contacts and 10 cleanups. So, you know, there is a noticeable difference. It's slow but sure. So I'm very happy with it. All right, on the question then. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Thank you. Next item, Common Clerk.
Next is item 6, members' comments.
Okay, just before we begin, I just want to recognize the former mayor of the city of St. John. Ivan Court was a man whose life was defined by service, integrity, and unwavering dedication to his community. He was born and raised in St. John. Ivan's journey from an educator to a civic leader left an indelible mark on the city he loved. As a teacher for over 3 decades, he shaped young minds with compassion and wisdom. As mayor and public servant, he led with vision and heart, always striving to build a better future for all. Ivan's tireless work extended far beyond politics. His volunteerism, advocacy, and leadership touched countless of lives. Whether chairing boards, championing public safety, or fighting for vital services, Ivan gave his time generously and his spirit fully. He was a devoted husband to Bliss, a proud father and grandfather, and a cherished brother and friend. His legacy lives on not only in the institutions he helped strengthen, but in the memories of those who knew his kindness, his humor, and his fierce commitment to doing what was right. St. John has lost a pillar, but Ivan's light endures in the city he helped shape and in the hearts of all who carry his example forward. Thank you, Ivan, for all you've done. Okay. Councillor Hoggan, you start us off.
Yeah, same thing. I taught with Ivan 20-some years in summer school, and then he later came down to St. John High. And Ivan's just a good person. And I wanted to tell a little side note that Ivan and I, and Al Rouse, his assistant at the city and former teacher, ended up going to Boston one year for a week in the summertime. I figured out a way to use our professional development, and we went down and worked in a presidential race. And the 3 of us, when they found out in the Republican areas that we were Canadians, I've never been sworn at so much in all my life by telling people they're Canadian. And but anyway, the 3 of us had a really good time and chalked it up to professional development. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sullivan?
Thanks, Deputy. 2 quick pieces. I'm not sure if the camera can zoom in. You know, I'm not just growing this mustache to look like all the other cool kids who were sitting around the table here. It's Movember, and for those of you who don't know, Movember is an international charity dedicated to men's health, particularly research and support for testicular cancer, prostate cancer, and men's mental health. You know, and very near and dear to the Sullivan family. We've lost members to mental health tragedies, and my dad went through chemo and suffered from it with his prostate. So you can find, if you find my social media or just type in Movember, you can find links where you can donate. But it's not just about donating to the cause. My dad was a doctor, and he was the worst patient ever. And men can be stubborn sometimes and not talk about when they have a mental health issue that they need to talk about, or not talk about going to the doctor because they need to get their checkup. And it saves lives. So in November, my wife puts up with my whatever it is on my face so that we can help get the message out and support men and support people who support men. So please, support men, support the cause in Movember. And just a couple of quick pieces, I guess, from my perspective on Ivan. Not much I can say that hasn't been. You look at social media and see what effect he had on students as a teacher, as a coach. I had the privilege, the very entertaining privilege of serving with him for 4 years around this horseshoe. I almost feel like I should just yell at the TJ just for old time's sake. But when you think about some of the foundational things that happened when he was around the horseshoe, he served on the council that started harbor cleanup. He was mayor of the council that finished harbor cleanup, so St. John wasn't dumping sewage into the rivers and the bay anymore. He was a huge driving force behind, the $180 million Clean Safe Drinking Water Project. The fact that St. Johners can turn on your taps and flush your toilet, and it's award-winning clean water coming out for us to drink and safe treated water going the other way. Not fun, sexy stuff by any means, but foundational to allowing the city to move forward. Certainly the controversial, at the time, building of a police station. We were renting space here, and look what this building is now. I don't know where the police station would be now, perhaps where Lawton's was in Brunswick Square or something, if Ivan really didn't push back against a lot of public sentiment and say that's the right thing for the city of St. John. And, one thing I will say, for folks who serve around this table, and I've seen it in my experience, he loved St. John. That's why he served. He loved working with kids. That's why he served. And to be at the front of this crew and take the shots that he would through the media and social media and still stand up for what's right, that's a real message to all of us, that we may disagree, but don't get pushed out by the public of what you believe is right. So certainly the city of St. John, his students are certainly better off, and I want to send my condolences to the Court family and friends, because certainly mayors in our time, he was one of a kind.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Darling.
Thank you, Deputy. I just really wanted to quickly let folks know about a new contest happening in the Uptown area with our local businesses, championed by Uptown St. John. It's the biggest Shop Local to Win contest to date. Tap Local to Win. It's happening between today, November 3rd, and December 14th. Every week, if you have uploaded your receipt of a purchase of $15 or more, you'll be entered for a chance to win $5,000. And if you've paid with your Interact debit, that's an extra $5,000 on top of that, so you could win $10,000. A great time to get some of your Christmas shopping done locally in the Uptown area. More details that I'm probably forgetting on taplocaltowin2.com, and the same place you upload your receipts to win those prizes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And you can wrap us up, Councillor Radwan.
Thank you, Deputy. A couple of things. I was really excited to see year-to-date, we received 627 permits applications, which were valued at $317.4 million. That's huge. I also wanted to, on a down note, mention that we still have some illegal dumping happening in, particularly in Redhead. And big thanks to staff, because they've been trying to do some things to mitigate the illegal dumping that's been happening in Forest Hills. So far, that seems to be working. They've been trying to do some things out in Redhead. Unfortunately, some people are getting past that. The city does have a program that people can end up registering to have 3 bulky items picked up twice a year. And so you can contact customer service to find out exactly what you can put out there at 658-4455 or email service@stjohn.ca. And just on a note about Mayor Court. I recall 14 years ago, these two fairly young entrepreneurs opening a business in St. John and being extremely nervous. And I was one of those people, extremely nervous, because we were told that the mayor is going to come to cut the ribbon. And it was thrilling. And to have the mayor come and MLA at the time, Carl Killen, it was really exciting. So we were very, very nervous. And when he came, I was all, jittery and said, "Thank you for coming." And he's like, "Oh, it's my pleasure." And he acted like it was just on the agenda, just something to do. So we were absolutely thrilled. So if I can say, my business partner would also like to say condolences to Ivan Court's family, friends, but the whole St. John community, because it's been quite a loss.
Thank you very much, Councilor. Okay, next item, Councilor.
Thank you. We're not quite at 6:30 yet, so we'll skip past the public hearing. And the next item would be 12.1, update from the CAO on select catalytic projects.
Over to you, CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening. For the catalytic projects update, I'll provide an update on 3 of the projects, starting first with the public schools. Work continues there at the North End School. A lot of structural steel is now up and concrete work continues at the South End School. Site work is continuing along with concrete pours for the foundation. And we have a capital project going on in that area as well in the South End for St. James Street. The contractor has completed all the underground infrastructure work, and they're working along with reinstatement of asphalt and concrete and that sort of thing. Has been done on the north side and will be done on the south side once the foundation work for the school is completed. In terms of affordable housing as it relates to grants, we are happy to announce that the 3rd round of intake for affordable housing grants will be launched on Monday, November 17th, and will close 2 months later on Friday, January 16th. The city's Housing Accelerator Fund target for affordable housing units has been exceeded, and approximately 200 more units are currently being tracked. However, in terms of our overall performance, we do need more multi-units, which are in the pipeline, and we'll continue to have to make progress on those. In terms of the soft grant program, that remains open with funding available for up to $25,000 per project if the applicant has successfully leveraged the RDC pre-construction funding. And by way of the Housing Accelerator Fund program updates, our metrics dashboard will be loaded tomorrow, and that will be current up to October 31st. And in terms of further updates, we do have demonstrations of our e-permitting RFP that's underway, and we'll be selecting the top proponents this month. And regarding the North End Secondary Plan, an in-person community engagement was held last week, complete with visioning exercises and a presentation of draft concepts with over 70 residents in attendance. And staff are targeting a draft plan in early 2026. And lastly, there's some items wrapping up with respect to Fundy Key. The final work continues, but there's a new deck that has had work going on it between the Ale House and Market Square, and that's now been granted occupancy by building inspection. And lastly, some work continues to happen at the stage with further sound system improvements, and you may hear some of that testing going on later this week as they make further improvements to the sound system. And that concludes the update, Your Worship, subject to any questions. Thank you.
Okay, I see one light on. Councilor Harris?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy. CEO McGovern, have we made any progress on being able to identify and track how many affordable housing units we're hemorrhaging? We've talked about this a few times. There's been some news reports. I know Carleton University did a study on the province. It's not really been updated. It seems to be a really difficult thing to track, and it's difficult to measure the success of additional units without knowing what we've lost. Yeah, I just don't know if we've made any progress there. If we've, yeah.
Yeah, Thank you, through your worship, to the councillor. We have engaged in discussions with the province on that. Last I heard, there was no formal tracking mechanism in place to account for those that actually came off the market. But we continue to make progress with the additions, and I'm not sure, Commissioner Papenroth, if you have anything further to add, or?
Thank you for the question. I don't have any further updates on that. We can certainly circle back, and I can get an update from Mr. Reed on that. But I know the last we heard, it was really difficult to track.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
goes hand in hand with our vacancy rate, which doesn't include buildings that are not currently listed. So if you've got a vacant building and it's not listed, it doesn't show up in the vacancy rate. I think those two things are really important pieces of the puzzle to try to bring home. And for St. John specifically, I know Winnipeg's another city that has some of these issues around vacant buildings. But without knowledge of that, it becomes difficult to really paint a picture of progress on those additions. They're great news, don't get me wrong. That's more than what we've normally seen year over year in additions. Hard to know, though, without that number, if we're catching up, exceeding, or any of that. So anyway, just flag it again. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Okay. Where am I at here? So I'll take a motion then to receive for information. Counselor Sullivan, seconder. Counselor Darling on the question. All in favor? Thank you very much. Next item, Common Clerk.
Thank you, Deputy. I'd recommend we skip ahead to 13.1, and that's a Growth Committee update, East St. John Program and Services Review.
Okay, thank you. Council, the Growth Committee endorses the comprehensive evaluation of the community services on the east side, Ward 4, including east of McAllister. That began in January of 2025. The evaluation was launched to better understand the unique strengths, gaps, and opportunities within the local service network, and staff engaged residents, schools, service providers, and elected officials through surveys, interviews, and in-person discussions, while also reviewing historical patterns and mapping current services to compare coverage across other city wards. Since approval of the Growth Committee on Tuesday, October 28th, the recommendations have been to Finance Committee on Wednesday, October 29th, and funds have been incorporated into the draft 2026 operating budget for Council's approval. Program Manager Craig Ganong is available for if there's any questions. Councilor Radwan.
Thank you, Deputy. I do have a question for Craig, if I can ask. And I'd just like to say this report's amazing. I hope the East Side will take a look at it. Craig, first of all, you've done an incredible job. I hope I see you around here for a long time. But just to get to the report, so could you kind of give like a bit of a summary for the safety of the public on what your findings were? And I know that it's probably really hard to gauge a timeline for everything, but just a timeline for anything that you think might be able to happen in the next year or so.
Through your worship to the councillor. So in determining timelines, there's certainly things that we can address right off the bat, things that we can get in motion right now. However, there are some other things that are kind of longer term goals that we'll strive towards. And this is of course dependent on department resources and things to that sort. So for example, recommendation 1, establishing a neighborhood coordination body for East St. John. This is one of the bigger pieces and kind of the main, I guess, the higher recommendation of the study. And it's because the East Side currently lacks a unified community organization to coordinate programs. So we do have groups out there on the East Side that are doing great things. It's just that we're lacking kind of that formal structure and support that we could be providing. So that's something that I foresee being kind of a longer term goal, and we're going to work towards that. Recommendation 2 is around enhancing the accessibility and affordability. So expanding those opportunities also for key demographics. So we actually noticed within our study that the youth and seniors are facing the greatest service gaps alongside with newcomers and also people with disabilities and also those experiencing mental health challenges. So constant issues were affordability, transportation, and lack of evening options as kind of the main reasons or barriers as to why they weren't participating. So these are things that we can be addressing in the near future while we're planning, whether it's future programming or the expansion of current programming. So that's something that we're going to keep in mind while we converse with our stakeholders and also our service providers on the east side. Recommendation 3 was around supporting service coordination and collaboration amongst those providers. So that's something we can get right into, getting all the service providers on the east side in line and ensuring that we're not duplicating services. We're bringing the service providers together so we're all on the same page and doing things in an efficient manner. And that would kind of go, it's separate from establishing that neighborhood coordination body, but it's kind of one of the main first steps that we would take to bring it to that. Recommendation 4, as mentioned in the report, so building that capacity and sustainability of local providers. Again, so highlighting those opportunities that are already out there and reducing the duplication of services again. So just stronger collaboration in general, strengthening local organizations to ensure consistent service delivery and long-term sustainability of those providers. And also, one of the main pieces, while it's recommendation 5 in our report, it still was the main theme actually in our report, and it was the lack of awareness of services available on the east side. So we really want to get a city-led platform out there to kind of centralize information of services on the east side, ensure that the residents of the east side as well as the rest of the city are aware of what's available to them, how to access them. And that's kind of one of the main pieces that we could kind of tackle right off the bat. So I see that as something that we could right away start to build on that platform. And finally, recommendation 6 was around investigating the establishment of a full-service community center. So like other regions in the city, there's kind of those hubs within the communities, walkable distances. They're very accessible to residents. So we want to have something similar like that to the east side. Of course, you look at the geographical size of the east side, it's very hard to kind of pinpoint what's the best spot for all east residents to access it. However, that's when we take into account the planning of perhaps there's satellite locations around the east side with a main hub that kind of accesses the most population density as well as tackles the most poverty at the same time. So those are some statistics that we would keep in mind. I hope that wasn't too much to answer your question, but that's just a bit of, I guess, the reasoning of why we brought these recommendations forward. And also, I hope that kind of gives an understanding of what are the longer term and shorter term things that we're looking to plan. So
That's
Excellent.
great. And Deputy, I have comment, but I'll come back around.
Yeah, we got 3 minutes, 2 more comments. So Councillor Lowe?
Yeah, anyways, probably the best or one of the best reports I've ever seen in the 10 years I've been around here. Like, there's no question you can ask about East St. John, from Bayside out to about 100 feet past that bridge out there going to St. Martin's. That's not in that report. And the last thing you said, it'll have to be a hub probably in the ward next to me in the 4 ward, but it has to be satellites because it's 20 times size of Pulse and 20 times size West Side but I mean, it's one of the best reports I've ever seen, and I hope hope you stay around. Like, I mean, I don't know if you're full-time or part-time or casual, I'm scared to ask you. But I mean, I hope it doesn't sit on a desk and doesn't get utilized because it is a salvation to Bayside out because they've had nothing for years. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Harris?
I used to be a community development worker on the east side, living in Forest Hills. I echo much of what Councillor Lowe said, but the most, I think, important thing you put off on recommendation 1, did you identify somebody? There's many groups active over there. And they're all sort of working within their confines of their little geographical area. It's very oddly organized communities just because of how much commercial and retail space has taken up and how it was organized over the decades. But do you identify anybody that you think could perform a bit of a pseudo-ambassador role to start to bring together some of those groups that already exist, that's already active? Because it's sort of been my comment around this table for the last 4 years. In these other communities, like our priority neighborhoods, there's been community champions that have kind of risen up with a lot of grassroots organization behind them without the city trying to parachute or or plant somebody in place. They've sort of originated from the community, and that's always been a missing piece. I didn't know how to solve it when I was there, because like you say, that geographical disconnect is real. So did you identify anybody who might take on that kind of a role in partnership with the city as we build toward these other 5 recommendations?
Through the deputy to the counselor. So again, so while we are kind of early in that process of figuring out what the structure is going to look like, how it's going to come about, one of the main things that we really want to stress about this is we're not going to come in as the city of St. John and say, okay, this person is going to lead this and we're going to run with this structure. We really want to push that community feedback portion. So it would take more extensive community feedback in determining, okay, what's the best fit for this? Ensure that we're bringing our service providers together at those meetings, for example, and determining who are kind of those standout leaders who have the time and are willing to take on that responsibility of leading a group like that. So definitely something that would kind of foster organically as we go. But in terms of determining who would lead that, or if there's current groups out there that could be a potential kind of host or lead that as well, it's something that we're definitely open to. However, we would like it to happen organically, as I mentioned, and ensure that it's the best that the residents perceive as how it should be structured. So
Yeah, probably a stipend of some sort to support somebody who can start to organize some of that would be helpful, and it may even be a service improvement. But anyway, it was a good report, a great starting point. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Radwan, do you want me to put this motion through and then?
Yeah, I just want a quick comment, Deputy. I know I'm so excited about this. Craig's done a really great job. And one thing, I think staff are pretty much on board that we don't need to reinvent wheels of doing like another building. So I'm hoping to see, with agreements, hopefully going forward, that the field house has community space. But even with that said, I think that we need something before then. It used to be up in Forest Hills Elementary School. The community needs something sooner than later. So I'd like to see something next year available to the community. So hopefully something will come out that way. This neighborhood coordination body is a fantastic idea because there's a lot of leaders out there. The other big thing that I think that we're really going to need is that community development officer position needs to be put forward as soon as possible. Ideally, I'd love to see somebody in that role in the first quarter of the year. I know that that's pushing it when it comes to hiring, but it's just so critical for us to have somebody in that role. And I mean, if you look at this report, I'm not saying that the money wasn't needed, but there was $10 million brought to Living SJ for other areas of the city that needed some empowerment and uplifting. And I'm sure that was needed, but the east side was left to the wayside. And I think that we're seeing some of the outcomes of your report because of that. The other thing that I just want to quickly mention is that with the community development officer role that we're going to be funding in all other wards, the province also funds somebody. So I'm hoping that the province is going to step up and do that as well. So anyway, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So the Growth Committee recommends that Common Council, 1, approve the recommendations contained in the East Side Community Service Evaluation as presented to the Growth Committee on October 28, 2025, and direct staff to begin implementation. And 2, direct the Finance Committee to include resourcing requirements for implementation in the 2026 operating budget, including 1, a new permanent community developer coordinator and $67,000 and existing goods and services funding to be redirected to support neighborhood development implementation on the east side. Could I get a seconder? Second? Okay, on the question, all in favor? Thank you very much. Next item, Common Clerk.
Thank you. It's now just a little bit after 6:30, so we can start our public hearings. So the first one on the agenda is 9.1, a proposed zoning bylaw text amendment with a Planning Advisory Committee report and staff presentation for crematorium use within medium industrial zone.
Okay. Commissioner Pothroth?
Yes, thank you, Deputy and members of council. This evening's first public hearing is for zoning bylaw text amendment submitted by St. John Industrial Parks for an amendment that would establish a crematorium use as a permitted use in the medium industrial zone. The application has been evaluated by staff and the Planning Advisory Committee, and included in your package is the recommendation to approve the proposed amendments. I'm pleased to introduce to council a new planner on our team. Roseanne George started with us in the summer. She's the planner on this file, and with that, I'll now turn it over to Roseanne for the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah. Can I be heard? Yeah, okay, all right. Good evening, Deputy, members of Council, Chair, and members of the audience. The City of St. John has before you today a proposed text amendment to the zoning bylaw to allow for crematorium use in the medium industrial zone. The next couple of slides should help in understanding this proposal. Oh, sorry. This application is seeking to amend the current text in the zoning bylaw pertaining to the medium industrial zone to allow for the creation of a crematorium use that will enable a standalone crematorium facility without the broader elements of the funeral service use. That includes visitations, preparation of bodies for burials, sales of coffins, etc. We are proposing the definition of a crematorium to be a development where the buildings or structures are used to cremate human or animal remains. The minimum parking requirements would be to have 1 per 50 square meter. This change would eliminate some of the land use conflicts that could occur if a full funeral service establishment were to be developed that would entail hosting clients, conducting visitations and services in an industrial area, while also streamlining the approval process. This would provide flexibility in establishing crematoria development on sites across the medium industrial areas of the city. This will ensure that crematoria developments can be developed as standalone facilities within the IM zone, which will typically require rezoning and will be subject to more robust site development requirements. The licensing requirements, as you can see in the slide, for the province of New Brunswick were looked at with Section 40 of the Cemetery Companies Act, stating that no cemetery company shall establish a crematorium until the minister, which is the Minister of Health, who will approve the same. So a jurisdictional scan was conducted that involved doing a comparative analysis of different municipalities across various Canadian municipalities that primarily looked into crematoria as a permitted use in the industrial zone. And the only notable cities of Calgary and Edmonton, both Albertan municipalities, that came up where crematorium was a permitted use within the industrial zone. So I'll make a note here because we are in New Brunswick, so I'll make a note of our neighbor municipalities in New Brunswick, but none of them showed up as having crematoriums as a permitted use. And they have them mentioned in some cases only within, like I said earlier, within the realm of funeral services and not as standalone facilities. So this is why we're choosing to make a mention only of these two Albertan municipalities. I'll just give you an example of what Rothesay is doing. Crematoria is a conditional use in the institutional major zone, and crematoria is permitted as secondary to funeral homes in Fredericton. The sole amendment to the zoning bylaw amendment, after we submitted the material to PAC, it was conveyed to PAC at the PAC meeting, and it was subsequently okayed by PAC, and this was the sole amendment that was, we introduced a minimum separation distance of 300 meters, which is to be kept from the site of the crematorium to certain sensitive uses, which is residential dwellings, daycare services that include the center, home, and neighborhood, and schools K-8 and 9-12. As for the policy alignment, it is in alignment with the city's municipal plan. The proposed amendment, which would permit the development of crematorium within the medium industrial zone, aligns with the city's broader objectives pertaining to a broad range of compatible medium industrial uses that have minimal nuisance levels or risks that will not extend beyond the boundaries of the lot. And so, as you can see on the screen, there is policy LU 73. So while this is the policy that is seeing a text amendment to allow for standalone crematorium facilities in the IM zone, The industrial nature of crematorium use provides options for existing and future service providers to establish standalone crematorium facilities within the IM zone that are not associated with the broader communal functions of the business, which, like I said earlier, includes the ceremonial functions related to the funeral industry, which include visitations, memorial services, and the sale of coffins. As for the second policy that we can see on the screen, the LU 74, this amendment will enable a more desirable use of the industrial space in the IM zone for crematorium use, instead of placing them within residential zones. So the broader communal functions of the business, which includes the ceremonial functions related to the funeral industry, which is the visitations and memorial services, and the sale of coffins, can be held at a more desirable location, as is already stipulated in the zoning bylaw. For public engagement, since this is a text amendment, the only public engagement is the required city's website notice for the public, which was posted on or before October the 13th. We have had no letters submitted. The public hearing for this application will be held today. We have been in touch with St. John Industrial Parks regarding this application. That is when they received an application from Fundy Funeral Homes to create a standalone crematorium facility on McIlveen Drive. The applicant spoke to industrial property owners in the McAllister Industrial Park, and there were no concerns cited. So staff are recommending, and PAC as well, that Common Council approve bylaw number CP 111209, which is a text amendment that would essentially propose a new crematorium use as a permitted use in the IM zone. We are also recommending that the proposed new definition be accepted. So thank you. And this is just one slide that we added to the PowerPoint presentation. This is in response to the letter that was sent earlier in the morning to the mayor and the members of council and staff. An email was received from Mr. Dennis Griffin regarding the proposed inclusion of the crematorium use within the IM zone. So I believe an email was sent by Pankaj already, but I'll just quickly say so as you can see in this map, this would illustrate the location of the property that is owned by Mr. Dennis and Ms. Elizabeth Griffin. And you can see that is the dotted outline in dark blue, which is adjacent to the McAllister Industrial Park. The southern portion of the property that is towards Redhead Road is zoned RR, while the northern portion is zoned IM, that is consistent with the zoning of the surrounding industrial park. The survey work and construction activity that was noted by in Mr. Griffin's email, that is by Bell Bay, and that pertains to the site at 258 McIlveen Drive, that is the cyan blue polygon there, which is the ball hockey arena and is currently under construction. So this development was a permitted use under the IM zone, and so therefore no notification to adjacent property owners was required in that case. So the amendment before council this evening seeks to allow crematoriums as a standalone permitted use within the medium industrial zone, the IM zone. This amendment does not constitute approval of any specific development or permits at this time, as the exact site location of the proposed crematorium has not yet been determined, although the potential site is under consideration, as can be seen as the white polygon on the screen. Staff are present this evening and are available to answer any questions. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, I'll call the public hearing to order now, and I'll ask anyone wishing to speak against this application to please come forward, state your name.
Good evening.
You didn't want to be first, did you?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Sherry Cole McCaver, and and thank you so much. Saved my back. That's good. Poke me in the eye. We're good. I am a resident of West St. John, Ward 1, and I live in Lornville. I just have a few questions this evening. I'm going to be quick. I swear I'm not going to use my whole 10 minutes, so I'm not going to bore you on that. I went through the presentation today or yesterday, and I just have a few questions that I'm hoping city staff or you all could answer for me. As per the city staff presentation, I see that there's a recommendation for a buffer between the potential crematorium and places of residence, schools, nursing homes, et cetera, and it's supposed to be 300 meters. And I believe that the 300-meter buffer for medium industry is a condition that was set with the new Spruce Lake Industrial Park. And it was stressed during previous hearings that 300-meter buffer would be from a property line of a resident to the intended building. I'd like to have some clarification, because when I read the presentation, it almost looked like it was from a residential dwelling to the crematorium. So I'd like to have clarification on what the 300 meters actually is, if it's from a property line or if it's from someone's residence in it. So it's one of my questions. As we said, the McAllister Industrial Park was mentioned in the documentation, and I'm assuming now that there is land in that park that can accommodate the businesses with a 300-meter buffer. So I'm a little confused on, is the buffer just for residential, or is it for the existing businesses as well? Is there going to be a huge buffer around this crematorium? Bearing in mind, like, what's the size involved for this facility? And as I said, what's going to be the distance between an existing business and the crematorium itself? So if it's 300 meters, if it's 15 meters, I don't know. I'm just looking for clarification on that.
Are you speaking against this?
I'm
Because-
asking for questions so I can make,
Okay.
because it's going to fall into my concerns over another industrial park.
No, I understand.
Okay.
But council asks the questions to staff at the end of the
Okay, I'm
public
speaking
hearing.
against it for now. How's that?
You what?
Until I get my answers, can I speak against it?
You can speak against it and not ask the question, but propose a question, I guess. But
Okay, so I'm proposing having questions answered for it.
the staff will answer questions from council at the end of the public hearing.
Pardon?
Staff will answer questions from councilors at the end of the public hearing.
Okay,
right?
so if I could pose the questions and then you could ask them. So I'm just trying to get an understanding. What's the zoning for the current crematoriums? And is the city going to kind of put a request to decommission the current crematoriums so that they can all be done in the industrial park?
Yeah. So that question can be posed at the end by a councilor.
Okay,
Okay.
and then
You
Well,
have
two
one
more.
more?
I got two more questions. I'm pretty sure I'm close, I'm nowhere near 10 minutes tonight. The presentation had indicated that the crematorium is going to be for human and pet remains.
Yeah.
So my question is, what are the chances that there's eventually going to be other matter permitted to be incinerated, as in hazardous materials, because it's going into an industrial park?
Oh, okay.
So that's my question.
All right. Now, what's the last one?
The last one is, are you going to do an EIA?
Okay.
That's it, John.
That's it?
That's
all?
it. I swear to
Okay.
God, that is it.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else want to speak against the proposal? Third and last time, does anyone want to speak against the proposal? Okay. Anybody want to speak in favor of the proposal? Brian? Come on up.
Good evening, Deputy and Councilors. My name is Brian Irving. I work with the St. John Industrial Parks. I'm here to speak in favor of the text amendment to permit the crematorium use in an IM zone.
Go ahead.
I don't really have a whole lot to say beyond what Roseanne said. I'd like to congratulate Roseanne on her first report to council. Well done. Thank you very much. The land use 73 and 74 cited in the report, I think, were excellent examples of why this makes sense in an industrial park setting. As you know, across Canada, these are in industrial parks and they're in commercial spots, and they're also adjacent to residential neighborhoods in some cases, and we just feel this is the appropriate location for said use.
Okay, thanks very much. And last final time, anybody else want to speak in favor of the project? Not seeing any, I'll close the public hearing and I'll open the floor to questions of staff. Councilor Lowe? Oh, wait, now, Councilor Ogden, I guess you're first.
This is for Brian, though. Point of order, this is for Mr.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Jerry. Okay. I just want to make sure that Sherry's questions get answered. I can't remember them all. I'm sure staff was listening to what she was saying, but I thought, just a point, is I thought that bodies are not allowed to be cremated with hazardous waste, if that's where one of them was going to. I thought that was against the law anyway, but I would like to see her questions answered after Brian speaks with Jerry.
You asked the question, it'll be answered.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
do I have to, I can't remember
But
everything
right
she
now
said.
it's for Brian Irving. So Councilor Lowe, you go ahead.
Brian, just a quick question. Is there any geographic work being dug or anything at all in this file at that industrial park?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Is there any digging of the ground? Is there any work begun out there on this file?
Oh, no. Well, sorry, we have test pitted, I think, back about 2 months ago, 3 spots to determine the quality of the soils.
But there's no work, no
No,
construction
no,
still?
no.
Thank you.
That's it? Okay, so I guess that's it, right? So now I'll close the public hearing, and I'll open the floor to questions of staff. And Councilor Harris, you're first.
Thank you, Deputy. I don't particularly like parking minimums, so I need some clarification around the parking minimum component of this. It sounded to me like we were using this per square foot calculation to insulate us from a future potential of having funeral services on sites, but I know that in many other cities, there's a lot of the crematorium services that are offered don't have that on-site capacity, nor do they plan to live into it. So are we inserting this just for future options? And if so, what is going to be the cost of that? Because a parking minimum comes with a price tag for land assembly and land use, which I guess we'd have to justify why we would saddle somebody wanting to open a crematorium for this service in a growing city like ours with that type of bill. So can you help me understand the parking minimum piece?
Yeah, so I'm just going to help Roseanne out because a number of the questions are, I think, outside maybe what had been researched by herself. So this is really to ensure that there is enough parking for staff and for any respectful loading or unloading of decedents. So it would be very limited. The parking is similar to what you'd have in like a warehousing facility where you would have very limited staff. And if we find after a few get developed and operated, we would be more than willing to consider variances to reduce or come back and amend it. But we want to make sure that at the bare minimum, someone is providing adequate space for staff. And for that, I don't like the term delivery, but
Yeah, I mean, I understand where you're coming. I'm not going to push back on that. I think I see what you're saying. I guess it's just, if you're going to open a business, you're going to understand what you need to provide for parking. So us imposing an expectation on parking is sort of strange, but yeah, for the most part, that's fine. So there's a variance option that they can come back with if they don't need that kind of parking. And that's a pretty clear process, so thanks.
Okay, Councilor Ogden?
First, the question about remains of living creatures being incinerated alongside chemicals and everything. I think that's against law.
that would most likely be against what is allowed in a license. Typically, they would have licensing requirements through the provincial government, and it would be very specific about how they can operate, what they are allowed to cremate.
So we're making sure that that doesn't happen.
They would be required to
That
have an
goes to
operating
provincial, okay.
license. Yeah.
And I couldn't remember all the square footage. I think it was 300 meters from a residence to the outside of the land, the parking area, all the way around. Can you explain that, what Sherry was talking about?
Yeah, so I'll give, I guess, a bit more robust response. What is being proposed is to add this use solely to the medium industrial zone, We are not proposing to add it to the newly created Spruce Lake Industrial Zone. So it is not being contemplated for that industrial park, only areas that currently contain a medium industrial zone. The vast majority of parcels that have medium industrial zone are located within industrial parks. They are typically not located adjacent to residential, so there's usually a buffer. But in this case, what we were proposing is that there would be a setback for the use to ensure that if a new standalone facility is being developed, that it is located 300 meters away from a daycare, from residents, or from a school. A vast majority of these sites would not be in proximity to any of these, nor would it necessarily be a location if you were proposing to locate a new school. These probably wouldn't be areas where would be the optimum for site selection.
Yeah, and I can't remember the third question.
Environmental assessment.
Yeah, an environmental
Counselor.
assessment. Thank you, you wrote it down.
So they would be subject to their operational requirements through the licensing. So that could include an EIA or other environmental studies as per that agreement. And they would only be able to achieve their license if they meet the requirements set through that process.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sullivan.
I think I may catch the last one through you, Deputy. Does this creation affect any current crematoriums that are operating in the city of St. John? Like, would they be grandfathered or would they be decommissioned?
So we are not proposing to eliminate the crematorium component from our definition for funeral services. So the existing facilities can continue to operate. There's no restriction on them except for whatever is required through their licensing. This would be more, as new facilities are being developed, typically they may be looking to do a standalone facility that could be shared by multiple funeral service operators instead of co-locating, which is what we've historically seen not only here but across the country. So this provides support for establishing standalone in industrial areas, but doesn't force them to have a crematorium tied to the full suite of funeral service operations, which we do see, as you'd all be aware, the locations of our existing funeral homes are typically in commercial or even quasi-residential areas. They're typically in quiet neighborhoods, easy access to our cemeteries, places of worship, and things of that nature. So we envision those will continue to occur and operate, but this provides that opportunity as businesses are investing to do a standalone option in maybe a more suitable or sensitive location for the use.
So if I might follow up, Deputy, so like, as a planner who designs into the future, would you see this creation into the medium industrial zone over time would likely move the crematorium services out of neighborhoods and where they are now more towards this model?
Likely that's what we'll see. So as facilities either are looking at doing upgrades or have to build a new crematorium, they likely wouldn't get approval for some of their existing locations. So if they are creating a new facility, likely what we'll see is this scenario where they choose a location for the crematorium component and then have the facility more communally located for the community or service-based aspects of it.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ogden, did you?
Just to point a note to Mr. Sullivan, when my sister ran the SPCA Animal Rescue League, theirs became very rundown. And it was very costly to do it, and it was in Crescent Valley. And they didn't go ahead with it. And I just remember her saying that something like, I'm not sure we'd be allowed to do this today in this location. Because the former Animal Rescue League, SPCA, was built on the city dump. That's how they got the land. And, but I remember saying, I don't think they pursued it because they didn't know if they were allowed to do it in that Crescent Valley area.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Jennifer. Okay, over to you, Commissar.
Thank you, Deputy. In order to approve this, it would require two motions, approval of first reading by title and approval of second reading by title.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve by title? Councilor Long, Councilor Stewart on the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, if any, motion's carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve second reading by title? Seconded, Councilor Darling on the question. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you very much.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Next item, Common Clerk.
Thank you. So the next is our second public hearing, item 9.2 on your agenda, and this is a proposed Section 59 amendment with Planning Advisory Committee report and staff presentation for property at 1429 Loch Lomond Road.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, looks very good. Okay. Huh? Oh, okay. Commissioner Pothnath, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy and members of council. This evening's second public hearing is a Section 59 amendment submitted by PMG Living for an amendment that would remove the condition restricting the height of the proposed townhouses to 2 stories. This would enable the construction of 3-story townhouses as permitted in the low-rise residential zone. The application has been evaluated by staff and the Planning Advisory Committee. Included in your package is the recommendation to approve the proposed amendments. I'll now turn it over to Yeva Matson, the planner on the file, for the staff presentation. Thank you.
Good evening. So before you is an application to amend the Section 59 conditions at 1429 Loch Lomond. In 2022, this site included an adjacent portion to the west and was rezoned to allow for the development of 2 apartments and a series of townhouses. Conditions were imposed on it at that time. In 2023, these conditions were amended to allow for the apartment buildings to increase their unit count and height. And the application before you now is to amend the conditions on the townhouse portion of the development to increase the height and remove the restriction of 2 stories. The applicant has submitted a revised proposal that would see this building now, buildings become 3 stories instead of that 2, but would maintain a 2-story in the rear facing the existing dwellings along Lakefield Court. The condition in question, Condition A, did involve both portions of the site, limiting the height of the apartment buildings and the townhouses, as well as unit count. But as construction is underway for the apartments, these conditions are no longer necessary, so staff are just recommending the full removal of the condition rather than rewording it. The subject site, located on Loch Lomond Road, is within the primary development area in East St. John and covers about 7,227 square meters. Although it has a Loch Lomond address, it will be accessed via a new private street called Blue Jay Way. And the site was part of a larger design concept with that adjacent western portion that has now 1 4-story building, and it has the permits out for the second building. The area includes low-rise zoning and mid-rise zoning, as well as some commercial, institutional, and things like churches, convenience stores, and gas bars in the area. Here's an image of the site with the first apartment to the right. It is a little bit outdated, but it does show the whole wider site, and you can see the new townhouses would go pretty much where those parked vehicles and the flattened landscape is. Here is a more up-to-date photo of the site with the berm that has now been installed, which was a Section 59 condition. The townhouses would be still meeting that 6-meter rear yard setback as required. The site is designated stable residential in the municipal plan, which includes existing neighborhoods in the primary development area on municipal services and which have the potential to accommodate additional development at a scale and density consistent with surrounding context. So policy LU 86 and LU 87 are relevant in this case. For LU 86, the proposal does align with the goal of integrating increased density and intensification in existing neighborhoods and reflects the density found in the wider neighborhood as well. It is context appropriate with the surrounding low-rise building typologies. For LU 87, the intent of the townhouse development conforms by providing more housing options and a density transition between the kind of that low-rise built form and the mid-rise apartments. The proposal adds density and housing diversity in East St. John and could support future population growth and changing housing needs. The site itself is zoned low-rise residential, which is intended to accommodate a range of ground-orientated, lower-density residential developments, and this can come in the form of one units, semi-detached, duplexes, townhouses, stacked townhouses, and even small-scale apartments. The RL zone does allow for a maximum height of 3 stories, as per right, or 11 meters. At this time, even with the restriction for 2 stories in place, the maximum height would still register as 11 meters, as we do not regulate how tall a story may be. The surrounding neighborhood is also largely residential and has a mix of that low-rise and mid-rise developments, including apartments, single-family, townhouses, and duplexes. The townhouses would meet all the requirements of the zoning bylaw, including the requirements for cluster townhouses. Letters were mailed out to property owners within 100 meters of the subject site on October 3rd, and we have received 4 letters, sorry, 1 was redacted, and the public notice was posted on the city website on October 13th, and PAC was held on October 15th. PAC and staff are in alignment and recommend that Common Council rescind Condition A, which limits the height of development, as well as the unit count of the apartments. As said, since the apartments have already begun construction, the conditions are no longer necessary for them, and the townhouse development with 3 stories would meet the intent of the zoning bylaw as well as the municipal plan. So we are not recommending any new conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ava? Okay, I'll call the public hearing to order, and I'll ask anyone who wants to speak against this proposal to come forward. State your name and your address, please.
Good evening. I'd like to speak about a possible change
Name.
made. Sorry,
Name and
sorry.
address.
Seamus Hanley.
Jane?
Seamus Hanley,
Seamus, okay. And your address?
56 Old Lake Trail.
Okay, go ahead, Seamus.
Okay, I'd like to speak about a possible change made to the plans for the development of 1429 Loch Lomond Road. As we know, throughout this project, the developers required of the city to make multiple zoning changes and variances in order for him to proceed. And then it was then listed in the zoning approval and stated by the developer that the townhouse portion of the development would consist of owner-occupied units. In other words, these units would be built and sold by the developer to buyers that would then own them. And apologies if I'm wrong, but from the developer's website, it looks like this is no longer the case, and that the plan is now to rent out these townhouses in addition to the 80 units he will be renting in the adjacent buildings. These townhouses are going to be an opportunity for home ownership to people that chose to live here and provide a balance to the overall development instead of the entire project being dedicated to long-term income for the company that owns them. So my question is this: does the developer still intend to do what was said here the last time we were at council and sell these townhouse units? I believe this is an important question to ask. The developer has the opportunity to clarify whether he's going to follow through with what he originally stated, and if not, what changed and why are these now being rented instead of sold? That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? Okay. All right, thanks very much, Seamus.
Okay.
Anyone else wanting to speak against this proposal?
My name's Trudy Hanley. I live at 56 Old Lake Trail.
Okay.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor and Council. I would like to voice my opposition to the complete removal of Condition A of the Section 59 conditions. We are again in front of Common Council for the third time, and they are now being asked to completely remove Condition A after previously removing the entirety of Section 59 in lieu of a complete revision. The new proposal put forth by the developer and is stipulated by city staff in the report is in the executive summary as follows. The proposal is to rescind Condition A while maintaining the other conditions. This is important to keep in mind. Page 2 of 5, under the report heading Analysis, the applicant is proposing to remove Condition A. Under Section 59 conditions, the staff report states, the staff also recommend removing Condition A entirely rather than amending it, as permits have been approved and construction is underway in the adjacent apartments, making the conditions on the height and unit count no longer necessary. I have to disagree with the previous statements for the staff to rescind all conditions. The rescinding of Condition A would now allow the developer to do the following: increase the height of the current approved 2-story townhomes to 3 stories, increase the number of units in each of these proposed 3 stories, increase the overall number of units in the eastern portion of the development, and increase the overall number of units in the entire development, in turn increasing density at will. Approval would inherently change the development back to what the developers were originally asking for in 2021. Removing all of Condition A opens up the potential for significant future changes to the proposed size and density of the eastern portion of the site. This is not what was approved for the zoning change. The most recent approval has these townhomes as owner-occupied condominium or ownership tenure units at 2-story height. These units represent a building topography that meets the definition of the missing middle and a much-needed ownership tenure. Home ownership does not appear to be the case anymore. All mention of ownership has been removed from the current proposal, and the PMG Living website indicates that these are all going to be rented. This is simply a history of the versions. The first development was all 3 stories. After that, for the subsequent revisions, it's always been 2-story on the eastern portion of the site. The two-story design provides an eased transition from the apartment buildings to the existing homes. This increased height was the main issue during the rezoning process and was reduced to 2 stories for the very purpose of accommodating the adjacent neighborhood concerns and massing issues. The 2-story design is based on the December 11th, 2023 full revision of the Section 59 condition changes and is in keeping with the zoning application drawing details of 2-story buildings. The following is under Section 59 conditions, which stipulates design allowances and compatibility. The exterior design and materials of the proposed buildings to be in substantial conformity to the building elevation details in the drawings submitted with the rezoning application. That is the important part to remember in this Condition F. The current approved design conforms to the current Section 59 conditions of this development. During the December 11th, 2023 revision of the 59 conditions, full contextual drawings were provided to show the intent of the 2-story buildings. They are a design mimicking the look of a residential home. The current design mimics the look of the existing large-scale apartment buildings. This proposed design is outside of the scope of the drawings submitted for zoning approval and the substantial conformity requirements. As well, it no longer provides the intended massing transition. According to Condition F, it must be maintained as a 2-story building to be in substantial conformity to the building elevation drawings submitted for the zoning application. Changing or removing Condition A does not negate the Condition F requirements. The 3-story design at the front street level and 2 at the back does not change the building's overall proposed height change. Combined with the fact that the development site has been built up, puts the height of these buildings substantially higher than previously approved. The developer had made it very clear that due to sloping topography, his buildings would not be any higher than the adjacent homes. This is definitely no longer the case. It is obvious that the new proposed 3-story buildings will potentially tower over the existing homes. This was not the approved intent of the buildings in the eastern portion of the development during rezoning approval. The development at this point satisfies the municipal plan requirements of diversity in housing, a more complete community. Ownership housing, as previously stated by the developer, is needed for city residents. Rental units are being provided, and the development currently covers 3 of the 4 necessities that the city is struggling for. Increasing the height of the buildings does not provide any additional community need. In conclusion, there are several reasons this condition A removal should not be allowed. The potential for changing the development density and building sizes in the future, the building massing change from transitional building to another oversized apartment building, the site built up, which will add additional height to the buildings. The most important reason is as follows. The substantial compliance applies to minor modifications, but adding an entire floor is a major substantive change that significantly alters the scope of the project. Fundamental change in scope. The number of stories is a defining characteristic of a building. Adding an entire floor fundamentally changes the size, massing, and design of the approved structure. According to condition F, the proposed design is not in compliance with the zoning application and therefore cannot be allowed. The 2-story buildings are also not in compliance with the zoning application. The additional height and massing changes may be in compliance with condition A, but are in conflict and not in compliance with the condition F. Therefore, technically, the 4-story is also theoretically not permissible, even though it has been permitted. The proposed change cannot be allowed as it is technically non-compliant with the zoning application, and should not be allowed because it's regressing on the community commitment made with respect to homeownership, building design, and traditional massing. The developer has basically removed any compromises to accommodate the adjacent residents. When is enough enough? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Radwan?
Thank you, Deputy. Through you to Mrs. Hanley, just thank you for your presentation. Just a question. I'm wondering, you had mentioned that there was a change to the developer's website from 2-story townhouse advertised to 3, and now that it's rented, going to be rentable. Do you know when that changed?
Well, I noticed the signage back probably early spring. And they were advertising 3-story buildings, which was not permitted or allowed at the time. And this advertising has been going on for months before they even knew that they could possibly get approval for it.
Yeah, no, I can confirm right back to June 25th at least, but thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Any other questions or comments? No? Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else want to speak against this proposal? Going once. Anyone else want to speak against the proposal? And finally, anyone want to speak against the proposal? Okay, is there anyone that wants to speak in favor of the proposal? Anybody want to speak in favor of the proposal? Don't want to twist your arm, but.
No, I was waiting to be called up.
Okay.
My name's Paul Mangin. I'm one of the owners of 1429 Loch Lomond.
Okay. And you're in support of it, obviously.
Sorry?
And you're obviously in support of it.
Of
Okay.
course, yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
that's-
No questions? Okay, Paula? No, Councilor Radman?
I think Brent might have get in before me. Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Manager, for being here. Just wondering, when did you change this on your website? I mean, I did notice the signage out there the end of June, it was council's will that this would be a 2-story townhouse development at that time. So I'm just wondering, when did you change this online?
We didn't change anything. We've only posted one website.
Okay.
We've never made a change to the website.
Okay. But when did you-
Originally,
Yeah, well, I guess when did you start advertising that you were going to have a 3-story townhouse?
well, we never intended to do a 3-story townhouse. So we decided after the first, remember, those are renderings, right? We didn't have plans drawn up yet for the actual internals of the townhouses. And with our consultants, they said we really needed a garage. The plan was to put the garage down below. That's why when we're talking about 3 stories, we're really asking for 3 feet in the back, and the rest of the stuff is going into the basement. And the 3 feet allows us to put a 4th bedroom and a bathroom into the townhouse.
I didn't recall there being garages in your previous plan, even under, like, down underground. But the other question that I have, I know that there was one rendering in the last public hearing that showed the land raised up and then the big buildings going up. And it's such a small parcel of land, that's where I had an issue with it. Because all those the 2 buildings that are like 2 6-unit buildings, like, it's just towering over that. And that was one of my concerns on the left-hand side of the property where the building is built now. Are you planning on raising up the land anymore? I mean, obviously the berm is there for the townhouses because, I mean, it's just, the whole land just seems to be hovering.
The land won't be raised. I was actually as surprised as you were when I saw them build the way they built the land. And
Okay.
I'm not a developer. We're owners of a building that are
Yeah.
having it constructed, right? And they told us that they did that to make it flat, level.
Yeah, well, I mean, that makes me feel like it didn't really have to be done for it to be flat. But I mean, there was one rendering in the last public hearing that showed that, and that's why I was especially uncomfortable. But it is a small piece of land. Other question that I have for you, don't you own the land the whole way back?
Yeah, we have 15 more acres back there.
Yeah, I thought so, because I mean, I drove down the side streets today on my way in. I couldn't believe, it just feels like there's rooftops like almost right into the poor neighbors' yards. I'm thinking like,
Well, the
are they
neigh-
not able to do that further back on your property? Because it's not like you don't own that land.
We are actually getting test holes done now.
Okay.
The biggest problem with that upper portion of land is we don't know how much rock is there. And it's very hard to build and put services in with rock.
Anyway, thank you. That's the most uncomfortable thing that I had today is when I drove by there, I thought I would not want that in my backyard. It just looks like it's
But the
almost
houses
on
are much higher than,
No, not really. Like I didn't go on their property and everything is very evident there. It was really disturbing. I thought
Okay,
you've got all
Counselor,
this land
you
in the
can come
back.
back if you want. You're well over your
Yeah.
time.
No, that's fine. No,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Harris.
Thank you, Deputy. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. The journey, I remember bringing this up when we first did this. This came up very early on when we first got here, when I first got here. The journey around affordable housing and utilizing some of this, there's now some different creative models. And I say this with one caveat. I know we don't approve business models. We really don't have a right around this table to dictate what your business model should be around this. And as a matter of fact, from what I understand, if we were to try to do that or try to strong arm you into it, it would open us up to an appeal that could come back to bite us. But I'll leave that for legal minds to determine. But we approve land use. And one of the most forthcoming things right now is that there is these new models emerging around home ownership, affordable housing unit creation for rental housing. Where are you folks at with that spectrum? Are you working with federal partners, provincial partners?
No.
These are going to be strictly market?
Yes, and the reason for that is it's extremely difficult. Me and my partner recently, we have a need for more 1-bedrooms, but we can't get the math to work.
No, you can't.
And I would love to build a building with like majority 1-bedroom units, but I just can't get the financing to do it. And, you know, and I don't want to sound crazy, but, you know, once these are built, there's going to be quite a bit of taxes paid on these buildings, right? Which fall into the equation of, you know, financing as well, because we
Yeah.
have to be able to support the taxes as well as the mortgage.
Yeah. No, I think it's important to even say that. You know, it doesn't necessarily change my opinion about this being a good use for land or not, but I do think that it's really missed on the public about what the journey is like to try to get creative with business models, because government really hasn't created a pathway for that. And the banking sector doesn't seem to care about what the societal need is. They just care about what their risk mitigation is.
Well, that's what
on,
it is,
on
right?
the investment.
can
And
we-
that's very hard and it's very discouraging when you're in a role like this and you're trying to push folks like yourself to consider creative options for home ownership, lower income, middle income stuff. So I get where you're coming from. I just thought I'd ask, but it is difficult.
I mean, you didn't ask this, but I'd love for everybody to know, on average, each unit costs us roughly $290,000 to build.
Yeah, yeah. And that's pretty much par for the course across the country.
Yeah.
And when you look at places like Halifax and what developers have had to do, it's further and further out into residential areas with bigger and bigger buildings.
But they also command more rent in Halifax
Of course.
than they do here. So
Yeah, that's
it's-
right.
It's harder to build these buildings here than it is in Toronto.
Yep, yeah.
And somebody had asked, and I'm happy to answer the question, why they're not for sale anymore. And I hope I'm
You
not
might
the-
get it. We've got two more people.
Okay,
coming
okay,
asking
I'll wait,
questions.
I'm sure
Thank you,
that's.
Councillor Lowe.
The first gentleman asked the questions. I asked a PAC too, right? When I voted this at PAC, they were going to be sold. And then things have changed, and the first speaker asked the same question I'm asking. Would you explain why you changed from selling these units, which I thought was a great idea, to now renting these units?
So we're not home builders, and maybe if I had my crew, we could get it cheaper, but right now, they're estimating $320,000 per townhouse, plus the road and the services. So how much do you think I can sell these townhouses for? Can I sell them for $380,000? I don't think I can.
Okay, Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. Hi, Paul.
Hi.
If you remember, I was one of 4 councilors that originally, on your original proposal, we voted against the project.
I don't remember, but that's fine.
I didn't either, but I had to reach out to the clerk today to reaffirm it. Anyway, I was on the site today, had a great conversation with the general contractor. He enlightened me on a few things. First was the engagement with the neighbors. I know you've engaged with them, but his engagement, particularly him, he's told me some of the stories that he thinks he's got a great rapport with everybody now. There may be one house there that's still got some issues, but it came to light that some of these properties were actually infringing on your property.
Yes.
One of them had a pond on your property, some of them had trees, bushes, garden, that kind of thing. So he told me that he particularly has been working with these neighbors and left some of what they've done in place, other than the pond that had to be moved to put that berm in. I was quite impressed by that, because that is the kind of engagement that we want from all of our contractors, all of our developers. The thing that really surprised me, and you said it earlier, but this change that you're proposing right now, it's only going to increase the elevation, the top of this, by less than 3 feet, he says.
Right.
And that's to your knowledge, that's a fact.
That is.
And this guy knows what he's talking about. Iron Maple is a huge company, lots of credibility. So it's only going to increase this by less than 3 feet. So
In the back.
in the back.
In the whole,
and you're going to have a
height,
garage in
yes.
the front.
Yeah, in the whole
So,
height.
you know, I got to tell you, overall, when I sat on there today and I looked around, I'm impressed. I still have the concerns about traffic flow, congestion, that kind of thing. but overall, I'm impressed.
Thank you.
I'm impressed.
Thank you, Counselor.
We tried to engage with the neighbors. I have an open, I answer my phone every time they call. You know, we have one neighbor that's got a shed completely on our property. And as of right now, I said, if we never need that property, you can leave that shed there. We've built the berm around somebody who built their shed 3 feet past the property line. We've helped them move the rocks. They've even asked us, can we get a couple of those big rocks that we brought them over? So, I mean, I don't know what else I can do to make everybody happy. And I realize I can't make everybody happy, right? We have already started renting. We've rented 20 units so far. We have nothing but positive feedback. And I encourage anybody to come in and see the show units. I mean, these are not.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Counselor Radwan, you can wrap us up here.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy. Through to Paul, I'm having a bit of a struggle with this, and I realize why. You know, council was here last time. There was a whole bunch of conditions that were put in there. Some of it was to keep some of the trees that were already there. They got clear-cutted out. I know that there was encroachment on your land, but, and then finally, you're advertising for 3 stories before council approves it. So what's going to make me feel comfortable that whatever conditions the city has, that you're going to follow through?
Well, we follow.
I would love to have the trust. Well, there wasn't. There was clear cutting that happened that was not supposed to. So how am I supposed to feel confident that you're going to do what city staff are going to be expecting to have done?
You know, I can only tell you, I mean, we've spent $70,000 putting a berm and trees in there, and I know somebody wants to see more trees. Well, maybe we'll try and put more trees.
Well, and developers have expenses all the time. You're not
No,
having
no,
to put in a
I really-
playground. You're not having to put in, you're not having to put in trails in the back or anything. Like, it's a berm, and so it is an expense. This is the business.
We do have to put a walking path up to the other neighborhood so they can come
Yeah.
down and take a shortcut to the road, which we're fine with.
Yeah.
We're not complaining about anything that the city has asked us to do so far.
Well, you did in the PAC, and you're doing it again. So I just want to feel comfortable. I'd like to feel comfortable. I'd love to have a good.
If we build, okay, so we were told that we really do need garages. If you're gonna get families in there, there's gonna be 3, 4 bikes. We need garages. If I put a garage on the main floor, we have 3 bedrooms,
Yeah.
but then we have a very small footprint on the main
Yeah.
floor for them to live in.
I get it.
If I put it completely in the basement, well, that makes for a steep driveway.
Yeah.
So we're putting 70% of it in the basement, and that allows us to add a second bathroom and a second bedroom. Or,
Okay.
sorry, a 4th bedroom.
Yeah, no, I get that. That makes sense.
All right.
Yeah. No,
Thank you, Counselor. I don't see any more questions, Paul, so thanks very much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that wants to speak in favor of this project? Anybody else want to speak in favor of the project? Third and final time? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing then, and I'll open the floor for questions to staff. Counselor Sullivan.
Thanks, Deputy. It really just follows up on what Councillor Harris was saying, and I think I agree, but since it's certainly one of the concerns brought forward is the change from the advertising of being owner-occupied to being rental. That's not something that we can consider, is it?
From the planning perspective, through the deputy to the councillor, we just judge based on land use. We don't judge based on the user. So we don't distinguish between rental versus ownership.
Thank you.
No, Paul, you're done. Any other questions from council? No? Okay. So over to you, Carmen Clark.
Thank you. So in this case, if council wishes to proceed with approval, it's approving the Section 59 amendment that's in your council kit.
Councilor Harris, seconder. Councilor Stewart, on the question? All in favor of the resolution? Signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Counselor Rodwin? Motion's carried. Thank you all very much. Next item, Common Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Next, we have item 12.2 on your agenda, and this is a staff report preparing for St. John's 2025-2026 winter.
I believe Commissioner Hugenholz has a couple introductory remarks.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right, over to you, Commissioner Hugenholz.
Good evening, Your Worship. And I will keep it brief, given the hour. Certainly, Council would have heard lots of discussion since last winter on our resource levels and service level objectives for the winter management plan. Certainly, tonight, there's a couple items on our winter management plan update before you now, and the internal audit a little bit later in our agenda. And just to preface all of that, I guess it's important to keep in mind some of the overall context, which was the reductions that were made in 2020. So there were significant resource adjustments at that time. And at that time, we did not make any adjustments to those service level standards. So certainly that's been one of the things that we've been struggling with since. If you have a couple easy winters, then you can get by easy enough, look like rock stars, but get into some more of the challenging winter conditions, which we saw in the past winter, and that does raise some issues about our ability to consistently meet our service level objectives. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Director O'Reilly.
Commissioner Hugenholz. So the City of St. John does have a winter management plan. Within that winter management plan are defined service standards. All streets and sidewalks serviced are intended to meet certain conditions within a certain period of time after a snowfall occurs. The standards are summarized on this slide. We've talked about those in detail before, so I won't get into detail again this evening. But obviously, if there's questions, I can answer those. We were challenged to meet these service standards last winter, and particularly related to our sidewalks. Of the five of the 6 storms last winter, we only achieved our service standards on 75% or less of our sidewalks. This performance was not acceptable to the community, and frankly, it wasn't acceptable to us either. A strong desire to do better inspired us to invest more in finding improvements going into this coming winter. In addition to running a full construction and maintenance schedule over the past 6 months, we spent considerable time implementing improvements ahead of this coming winter. I will summarize these in future slides. As much as the city can do our part to influence how often we meet these service standards, we also require the community to do their part as well. I'm going to summarize 3 different ways in which the community can help achieve these service standards. We ask the public that during and following storms not to park on street. Service standards are not achieved, or it's inefficient investment of resources that need to be spent to achieve them if vehicles are blocking our ability to fully plow a street. The picture in the lower left on the slide is an example of how narrow streets can get when there's excessive and illegal on-street parking. This sort of scene occurred in several places in the uptown area. And in this particular case, we simply couldn't fit a street plow on this particular street. We asked the public not to push snow from driveways onto streets and sidewalks, and to also ask contractors, if you hire them, not to do the same. The sort of impact created is illustrated by the picture in the lower right on the slide. This shows a cleared sidewalk by a crew, filled back in by snow from an adjacent driveway. I do want to say on this point alone, Common Council has invested additional funds in this year's budget for enforcement efforts, and those enforcement efforts will be put to use dealing with situations like pushing snow on the sidewalks. We also ask the public, and third ask is when traveling by the vehicle or foot to adjust to travel conditions, again during and following snow events. This presentation to council is just one way we engage with the community so they can also do their part. We also have a specific page on the city's website, stjohn.ca/winter, where the community can better understand our winter service standards. Public is also encouraged to sign up for alerts for called parking bans and other information. They can do so through our city website, and I got a little snippet on the screen here, which people can click and sign up for those that information. As presented to council back in the spring, we identified a whole series of areas of improvement we plan to work on in advance of this winter to do our part to be even more consistent at achieving service standards going into this winter. I'm pleased to report that we not only identified these improvements back in the spring, but again, we worked over the past 6 months to implement many of them in time for this winter. We remain on track to triple the number of sidewalks that we plow with a street plow instead of a sidewalk plow. It's intuitive, but street plows can plow sidewalks much faster than our smaller sidewalk plows can. The added bonus is that when we plow sidewalks this way, we eliminate the line of snow that otherwise ends up between the street and sidewalk, sometimes gets pushed back and forth. The top image on the slide shows the conventional way we plow sidewalks with a sidewalk plow, and the street does the street plowing. And the below image on the right shows the results of plowing a sidewalk with a straight wing plow. You can see the difference. We have replaced, as planned, 3 of our old sidewalk plows, and these will be in operation this coming winter. Equipment downtime was one of the factors that caused us not to meet our service standards this past winter. We're going to keep 2 of the 3 old sidewalk plows that are being replaced with the new ones instead of selling them. Although old, keeping these 2 machines will introduce some very limited contingency to account for work that will inevitably be needed on our regular 11 sidewalk plows that cover our 11 sidewalk routes. This is the same philosophy we introduced a year or 2 ago with respect to our street plowing operation. They're old plows, but might as well hang on to a couple of them when the rainy days come. As I mentioned earlier in this presentation, on-street parking impacts our ability to plow streets and sidewalks. In addition to asking the public to park off-street wherever possible during and following storms, we are in line to implement 2 initiatives new for this year that we contemplated back in the springs. Fines for illegal parking are expected to increase significantly, with specific recommendations coming into Common Council related to changes to our traffic bylaw within the coming weeks. We'll also be turning to our own enforcement staff to authorize vehicles to be towed instead of relying on police officers. The motivation with these changes is to increase compliance so people do not park on the street so we can do our job. And of course, encourage that when people choose to park illegally. Several new measures are being introduced to reduce our level of salt usage. And these are detailed in our report, which also align with our 10-year strategic plan. Preparation and planning efforts have increased relative to previous years, as also detailed in our report. As of today, November 2nd, our entire Public Works team is now focused on getting ready for the winter months. In fact, training started today to get ready for it. Our return to construction season activities in 2025 will only take place if our people and equipment are ready to go for that first storm whenever it happens this winter. We're also making advancements in the use of technology and data that are also detailed on our report. Common Council will be asked further in this meeting agenda to approve an audit of our winter management plan and operations. Public Works will be engaged and committed to this audit. We look forward to additional lessons learned through this audit, in addition to the improvements I've already identified, get ready for this winter, again, to improve our service standards within resource levels. As a result of the improvements we found and additional opportunities identified in the audit, Public Works is holding off on recommendations to adjust our service standards or recommendations to increase resources as we discussed back in the spring. We're going to hold off on that till we look at these improvements as well as what comes out of the audit. A word of caution though, even with the improvements we planned for this winter, we're going to be far from fully resourced to consistently have equipment and people to resource our 46th Street and plow sidewalk routes. with each piece of equipment dedicated to servicing either 33 lane kilometers of roadways or 20 kilometers of sidewalks, a missing resource will cause delays in how quickly somebody's street or sidewalk is plowed. With that, Your Worship, that's my report, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Tim. That was a great report. Have a few questions here. Councillor Lau?
Yeah, like, as the winter comes, we can't control the snow. Only the big fella up there looks after that. But we should be able to control the parking, illegal parking, and when you, for instance, I represent the South End. Last year, I drove around after you closed it down. I probably counted anywhere from 20, 25 cars that were not towed, that had snowed, not hard to see what the plow drives around, right? And to me, it's not fair to the drivers that are driving the plows. And then you got the people on social media doing nothing but knocking that the streets aren't plowed, right? So two things. I think under the Motor Vehicle Act, a car that's abandoned after 24 hours is illegal. And the city, with all the enforcement people I think we're going to get, should work with the police department, at least notify the police department that these cars should be towed. I'm not talking about the snow day and that stuff there. I'll talk about that in a minute. But there's no reason why they couldn't be towed through the week, through the month, days that it isn't snowing. And we don't do that. Like we do nothing, in my opinion, and we do nothing to help the drivers that are driving the plows. So then I'll go to a snow day where you shut everything down at 12 o'clock, you notify everybody now, communications are great. Take a drive around the next morning, you'll see 20, 25 cars, snow on it. You can see where the plow drove around them. So last year, one of the days in the South End, I went down and I called Mark Dion. I talked to a lady called Jill. And I said, I just counted 25 cars that weren't towed, that the driver had to drive around. And when he drives around, the chances of him hitting a car or a truck, whatever parked there, are good. But also you're missing the guy in front and you're missing the guy in back. You're missing a good length of roadway. And she said, Jerry, we had no plows last night, or no tow trucks last night. And another time I called her, she said, we had one. So, I know we contract that out, but is there not something that we can get the company to bring other tow? I know there's not a lot of tow trucks, but I mean, we got to do, and I'm definitely not blaming you people. We, the city, got to do a better job of forcing plows or forcing tow trucks, the plow shed, to get tow trucks to come and remove these cars on both occasions, on the state snow day, but also through the week. I remember 2 years ago, a car was parked all winter up on 2nd Street, I think it was, either 2nd or 3rd Street. Never moved all winter. Stayed there the whole time. I'd drive up there, snow on it, and the guy plowing around all the time. I just think that you want all these changes. I think it's great. I mean, we can't control how much snow is going to come next year. We had an icy winter last year and a lot of snow. But 2 years ago, it was disaster for snow.
Councillor, do you want to come back?
No.
You're well over your 3 minutes.
But at least we control that. I think we can. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Sullivan, you're next.
I appreciate the increased enforcement for folks who are getting in the way. It really follows up a little bit on what Councillor Lowe was saying. Is there anything in the works along the same line with regards to holding homeowners accountable for when the sidewalk plow does go through and do a wonderful job, and then either they or their driveway clearer takes all the snow and then piles the big blockage back where we've just plowed? Is that in the works too?
Absolutely. So a couple of years ago, we did make changes to the bylaw to strengthen it, make it in line with our Local Governments Act. So that was done a couple of years ago. So our bylaw is strong. The missing piece, which is now implemented thanks to Council's investment this year, is the increase in enforcement level. So we hired an additional 2 staff members, well, contracted, but 2 people that are going to be available this winter to deal with 4 different bylaws, one specifically to do with pushing snow on the streets and sidewalks. So you bet one of my calls are going to be made the day of the storm. Is that enforcement officer get in the vehicle, start enforcing it? So we are increasing, we'll have increased resources this winter to enforce situations where people push snow on the streets and sidewalks.
Fantastic, great news. So we had some success and engagement a few years ago with naming plows. We have 4 new sidewalk plows coming. Sidewalk Sally, pedestrian path Pete, or maybe communications can put it out and do a better job. But we had fun with it a few years
Yeah.
ago. We've got some new devices to work the sidewalks. I'll throw that out there for you folks in communications.
Great teaser on that, Councillor. We had discussed with communications. Don't be surprised to see something repeat for this winter and maybe a couple of sidewalk plows in there. Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Radwan, you're next.
Thank you, Deputy, through you to Director O'Reilly. Great to see the improvements you're making. Do you have any thoughts on how far you think that this might get us to our strat plan goals, which is like 75% of sidewalk clearing? Because I think it'll move us up there. Not necessarily, well, maybe not get us there. And then I have a second question. It kind of came up by a retired local 18 person that used to work doing plowing. He said the best mix is 1 portion of salt to 3 portions of sand. Do we still do that? Is that something that's a thing? And I'm just wondering if we were going to get multiple tow trucks, but those are my 3 questions.
Sure, I guess one at a time. Yes, we're absolutely looking for both improvements we've identified and what comes out of the audit to maximize our resources to deliver our service standards. And we'll see how far it gets in terms of increasing the number of sidewalks we plow. Again, a word of caution, I truly believe we're not going to get there.
Yeah.
We'll likely be back before council again with a service standards adjustment or increased resources. But very hopeful with this audit and the work we're doing, we're going to get as close as possible to that. Yeah, in terms of the salt sand mix, again, most of our roads are still cleared with pure salt. It's more effective. We don't have to sweep it up in the spring. Doesn't end up in our stormwater system. But we do have rural areas around St. John with wells, and in those areas of St. John, we call it pickle, but put about 20 to 30% salt within the sand, and that's placed on those rural parts of St. John. Just a matter of how effective the salt is compared to the sand, but we do use the mixed sand in the rural parts of the city. And your third question was about towing?
About tow trucks, yeah, if we're
Yeah.
going to have multiple companies.
Yeah, so, I mean, Councillor Lowe kind of alluded to this. So, yeah, so there's one company in St. John that has the compound that's required to store these vehicles when they're towed. So there's one company that's involved. So they have a responsibility to manage those vehicles when they're towed, right? So they do have a concern about having tow trucks from other companies towed to their compound because they're liable for storing those vehicles. Again, we're making, I'm just as frustrated as some of the council members are, and our team is, about being able to plow when cars are parked. We're increasing the fines.
Yeah, well, that
Right.
might help, yeah.
My understanding is our towing contractor is increasing the charges people have to pay to get their cars out of compound. My understanding that's going to happen. And we're turning to our own enforcement officers to enforce anything within our traffic bylaw. So what that's going to mean is instead of relying on getting a police officer, and of course everybody knows they're busy doing other things, to have those enforcement officers ticket and then authorize the towing that's going to occur. And we're going to do that throughout the day and night. Because it's anything in our traffic bylaw, during the storm and following in the storm, as long as it lines with a violation of traffic bylaw, we can allow that enforcement to happen. So we're going to extend the amount of time we're going to do enforcement. And again, with having more on-the-spot authorization to have a vehicle towed, we're also hopeful that our towing contractor is going to have more resources available following a storm to be able to deal with it. It's interesting, like, a lot of this presentation, and I talk about it in the report, the demand fluctuates, right? We get bad storms, we get bad winters, but our resources are pretty well flatlined, right? It's the same thing in the towing business, you know, they have a certain business model, a certain number of drivers, certain amount of tow trucks, and we have this peak in demand for them. You know, same thing with our own equipment people. How do you get a whole bunch more people, a whole bunch more piece of equipment for a few days after a storm, but then expect to have the equipment available people for the rest of the year? So that surge in demand not only exists in our own operation following storms, but it exists with some of our contracted services. But again, as I mentioned, with all the changes I just laid out, our hope is through voluntary compliance, because the fine's going to be greater, and again, getting more towing actually happened after storms, we're going to see, again, an improvement in that level of service. But fully as frustrated as members of council and our team is, because we can't achieve that service standard. That's why we do need that compliance and support from the community. Just get the cars off the street, off the
Yeah,
street.
well, hopefully they do. And I mean, you asked the question, so my first thought was bring on more casual staff for a season, but are they out there? I don't know. Just a thought.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Deputy. Couple that come to mind, to Councillor Sullivan's point, is the Fun Day Flurry Fighter. We can consider that one. Possibly the Sidewalk Sheriff would be a good one as well. But all jokes aside, the culture of this has been really interesting to watch over the last 5 years around this table. When I first came on council, winter management was breezy conversation for us because the winters were a little bit milder. But I also have lived in 4 other cities, and it just seems like there's an assumed culture of awareness that the public has in other cities because there's a little more draconian approach by the municipalities. I don't know if that's where we're going to get here with that, but I see that's what's happening. We're trying to be a little more draconian around how we might enforce these bylaws, hoping the stick approach gets more compliance. That may or may not work. I'm always hopeful that the public just wants to be part of the solution. But there's a lot of distracted realities out there, people not finding extra places to park, and it's difficult, and it is, right? It's hard, but there's always solutions if you just take the time to do it. We can't really control the public, but we can control our own culture. So that leads me to my question. What are we doing internally to create a culture of prioritization here? Because we've been talking ever since year one about high-volume sidewalks being lower on the list because they're further from garages or whatever. And sidewalk, and I always say Ross Ave because pedestrians, the requirement for pedestrian use on Ross Avenue sidewalks is much lower. There's a lot of traffic volume that goes out there from cars, and they pull in and they park. But when you talk about sidewalks in certain parts of the town, they are all of a sudden, they are high need around schools and things like that. So what's our culture around prioritization, and how are we achieving that? And what you're showing me up on there for continuous improvement doesn't speak to that necessarily. So can you help me fill in the blanks?
Sure. So, I mean, our service standards for sidewalks are laid out, and they're all really based on like destinations, right? Transit stops, schools, retail areas. What I want to get to the point at, and I'm still trying to find the data around it, is a true representation for how much sidewalks are used.
Right.
I'll give you the equivalent. We can do large-scale traffic counts of vehicles. We're about to actually gain some software to even do better data related to vehicle movement because they all have GPS units in them, so we can use that. We did a little bit of work, as you recall, a couple of years ago. We did a sidewalk and crosswalk prioritization program, and then we asked that question, right? How can we better approximate actual levels of use of our sidewalks? But it's all based on that proximity to an actual destination is the problem. And so, and again, it's all about resources, right? Like I know sometimes we get requests, can we go further from a school and just make them higher priority? Well, the challenge is, it's the same thing with adding sidewalks. If we add higher priority sidewalks, we need more resources to be able to get them done faster. So it's a matter of, okay, if we make suggestions to the public saying we're going to completely change 100% how we prioritize our sidewalks, we better make sure we get some good data to back up
Yeah.
those decisions. And again, I'm searching high and low to find that ideal set of data to say sidewalk A has 30 people that use it and sidewalk B has 100 people that use it. And that is the measuring stick for
Right.
where we plow sidewalks, but I haven't found that.
Yeah, and I guess just to wrap up, finding some sort of universal data set would be also helpful, right? Because cities are all similar, right?
Yeah,
Urban
exactly.
people operate very similar across urban settings, so,
Yeah.
you know, if there's a place in BC that has some information on that, but it is hard to find, and it's a big gap, so I can appreciate that. Thank
Just
you.
one more point on that too,
Yeah.
and that's one of the questions we're gonna ask of our auditors as well. Like, they're gonna
Right.
bring in people with external knowledge, you know, again, we think we're pretty good, but we can get some internal knowledge on this. And if there's places around the country or beyond that answer questions like that, and that's one of our questions, by the way, because I know you've asked it multiple years. If we can gain that insight, with that auditing resource, we're gonna see if we can do something with it.
Great,
Yeah.
We're going to move on to that audit in a minute. I got two things for you, Tim. One is, do we or can we, in some areas at least, use those signs? You know, no parking, and if, because it reminds people, you know, if there's snow on the road and you're going to move it back,
Yeah.
and I'm going to park there, if I see a sign, I'm going to say, oh, they're going to move the snow back. You know, it's not going to work for everybody, but I thought they were really, really effective putting those signs down. I know in some cases it's labor intensive, but maybe we do fewer streets that way, and maybe we put the signs farther apart.
Yeah.
But I think that's one thing that we need to do. And the other thing I think we need to do is we need to try to get the public to help us. You know, I know like a lot of places around where I live, they're cleaning the sidewalk in front of their house, okay? A lot of cities, that's mandatory. I think, you know, we can help make that happen, you know, by having sort of ambassadors. And I think at one time there was even a contest or something where people could.
Snow angels.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
so,
Yeah.
but anyway, I see improvement. I, like Councilor Harris, I've been around a little while. When I first started, it was not great, but now it's getting better and better. Thanks very much. Okay, next item, Common Clerk.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Next is item 13.2. This is an update from Finance Committee Internal Audit Winter Management.
Over to you, Chair Sullivan.
Thanks, Deputy. I'll make a motion with the seconder. I'll give you a little bit of background. The motion is that Finance Committee recommends that Common Council approve the winter management internal audit as part of the 2025-2026 internal audit plan.
Seconded by Paul Redmond.
Thanks, Councillor. The audit requested through resolution of Common Council in the spring of 2025 after a very challenging winter season for the city. The audit will be led by our internal audit service with the help of external consultants who have several years of relevant experience in municipal winter operations, both through providing similar reviews and working within municipal operations. Upon approval of this audit, the team will get to work immediately and plan to work throughout the winter season with our Transportation and Public Works Department to determine ways to improve our service delivery. The final report, along with recommendations, will be reported back to Finance Committee in early spring, and management action plans will be put in place. The one piece I will add is, we talked about this at Finance, and the external consultants will be working with our team. So it's not like they're going to be fact finders and then show up with a report in the spring. The opportunity for ongoing improvement is going to go on through those discussions as it happens. So this is one of those situations where our team, especially in challenging winters, is so busy working in the business, it's hard to find time to work on the business. So this is some invested money to help do a little bit of both.
Excellent, excellent. Do we have any questions or comments? No? We have a motion on the floor. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Thank you, everyone. Next item.
Next is item 13.3, another update from Finance Committee with respect to 2026 General and Utility Fund Capital Budget.
Over to you, Chair Sullivan, again.
Thanks, Deputy. This motion is just, Finance Committee recommends that Common Council receive and file the general fund and utility capital budgets.
Okay, do we have a seconder?
Thanks, Councillor. So today it's just a receive and file so that you've got some time to absorb, and in 2 weeks' time, we'll put the motion forward to accept. But some highlights from it. The 2026 General and Utility Fund capital budget represents a total investment of $71.6 million. Almost half of the capital budget, $33.6 million of funding, is coming from our federal and provincial funding partners. I really want to thank the province for the commitment to fiscal reform. It resulted in just finding out 2 months ago that the City of St. John received an additional $7.7 million in capital renewal funding that's focused on critical renewal of core infrastructure, and that funding is based on data and the data we've been putting in. I will say, you know, some thank yous go out to the infrastructure team. One of the pieces of our financial plan that we've been working on over the last few years is going to a longer-term capital plan. And we had just gotten to the point this year where we had that 5-year outlook, and this is exactly why it was important. When the province changes their fiscal outlook and drops $7.7 million, there was no panic. There was no scrambling and battle to find out where the money went. We had a plan, worked the plan. So thanks to the province, but thanks for the team in the City of St. John for getting that ready so we were prepared. A few highlights for you. Playground investments such as Rainbow Park, Ellerdale, a tot lot at the intersection of Grant Crescent and Daniel Avenue. Investments in the city market as part of the city market strategic plan. Improvement to the tennis courts at Shamrock, pickleball court, additional funding for a cricket field. $6.5 million in asphalt curb and sidewalk renewal, continued storm sewer separation, design and street reconstruction on Charlotte Street and Canterbury Street, the 4 new sidewalk plows, I like sidewalk, Sheriff, to better serve our citizens, replacement of 2 city transit buses, another roundabout at Loch Lomond and Airport Arterial. Now this one's a little quirky because we want to get it done for the safety on the roads. We don't own those roads. Those roads are actually provincial highways. We are working a roundabout. So in a partnership with them, one of the keys for this to happen is we haven't signed a cost-sharing agreement yet with the Department of Transportation Infrastructure. We have been talking about $1 million being contributed to it. So as long as that agreement gets done, we can move forward and get that roundabout done. And other investments in St. John water assets to ensure reliable and safe delivery of our clean, safe drinking water. Those are the highlights.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So we have a motion on the floor. Could I see all in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor. Go ahead.
Looking it over, I'd like to know why we're spending so much money on Charlotte Street between Broad and Vulcan. It's a one-sided street, the other side's a port. I'd like to know why we're spending the money we are on that. Not that I don't mind spending it on it, but.
Through your worship to the councillor, for that particular section, it's actually street reconstruction from Vulcan to Broad, but we're also putting a storm sewer system from Broad all the way out to the ocean. So we're going through the sugar refinery site and putting a 1,500 storm sewer in, basically in order to separate the storm and sanitary sewer. So that'll add a second storm sewer outfall in that area, which our current one is under capacity. So the intent is so that we can separate more, we'll have 2 instead of 1.
We're lucky enough to get housing in that area down there. Will that fit into that there too?
So you could attach, if you could put storm sewer in there from a site, but we'll also be doing this storm sanitary and water all the way to the end of Vulcan. So anything in that area would be separated and tie into our new separated sanitary.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, on the question, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Next item, Common Clerk.
Next item is a consent agenda item that was separated. So it used to be item 5.1. It's now 14.1, and it's entitled Coming into Force of Bylaw LG 41 regarding stop-up enclosure portion of Retail Drive.
Okay, so that was pulled. Yeah, okay. Okay, seconder? Councilor Norton, okay, on the question, all in favor? Opposed, if any, motion's carried. Thank you very much. Next item, Councilor Kerr.
And the next item would be an item from Committee of the Whole, item 17.1. And this is with respect to Microsoft Enterprise Early Commitment Renewal. And the resolution would read that the city enter into an early 3-year term enterprise enrollment agreement with Microsoft Corporation for volume licensing renewal of Microsoft software effective May 1st, 2026, as outlined in the forms attached to MNC 2025-253, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the agreement and any other documents ancillary thereto.
Thank you. Could I get a mover on the motion? Councilor Sullivan, Councilor Stewart on the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any, motion's carried. Next item, Councilor Clerk.
And the second item from Committee of the Whole is item 17.2. It's with respect to acquisition of easement at 974 Kennebecases Drive. And the recommendation would be that the city acquire an easement for municipal services for $1 over a property located at 974 Kennebecases Drive, identified as PID 550-52351, as generally depicted on the attached sketch, that the city be responsible for the following in relation to the acquisition of the said easement: to prepare any plan of survey required to effect the conveyance of the easement, to pay for registration and filing fees by Service New Brunswick, if applicable, for the easement, and to reimburse up to a maximum of $750 plus HST for the vendor's legal costs associated with said agreement. And lastly, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the documents necessary to effect the transaction.
You got a mover on the recommendation? Councilor Darling, Councilor Radwan on the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any, motion's carried. Over to you. Okay. All in favor? Okay, thanks, everyone.